breaking news, the U.S. Capitol Police Chief is resigning. And it comes after the massive failure in security, you know, the rioters breaching the Capitol as lawmakers sat inside. A non-scalable fence is now going up around Capitol Hill. It's going to stand for the next 30 days. More than 6,000 National Guard members are heading to Washington from several other states. Alex Marquardt has been on the ground throughout all of this, out front now. So, Alex, obviously they are worried about anything happening in the future. What are you seeing outside the Capitol tonight?
Well, Aaron, things are very different out here tonight. For starters, there are almost no Trump supporters out here. Security has been dramatically stepped up. You mentioned that fence. It is right there. It has encircled the Capitol complex. And in the last few moments, they've added those large white cement blocks as well to reinforce it. You can see some D.C. National Guard behind that fence line. Now, there's been a lot of questions about arrests. Some 80 arrests have been made in connection to yesterday's riots. And officials are now saying that there could be dozens of local and federal charges.
With peace now restored in the Capitol, demands for answers. Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell called the violent insurrection a shocking security failure. Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi demanding the resignation of the chief of the Capitol Police, who now says he will step down on January 16th.
There was a failure of leadership at the top of the Capitol Police.
Pipe bombs were also found at the headquarters of the Democratic and Republican National Committees, as well as on the grounds of the United States Capitol. Congressional leaders are calling for an investigation into why Capitol Police seem so unprepared for the chaos, despite Trump supporters and Trump himself promoting the rally for weeks.
There's just no excuse for it. The intel was there. It was open source information. It was there.
It was shortly after 1 p.m. when pro-Trump protesters breached these barriers in front of the Capitol building, confronting Capitol Police and overwhelming them. The rioters smashed windows and stormed through the halls, even breaking onto the Senate floor. Nearly 5 hours later, just before curfew, D.C. Police, National Guard, and the FBI reinforced the Capitol Police and finally clearing the complex of rioters. Signs have emerged that law enforcement didn't always resist. An officer was seen taking a selfie with a rioter. Police opening a barricade for rioters after the Capitol had already been breached, demonstrating what is now being blasted as a clear double standard. Federal law enforcement treating pro-Trump, almost entirely white rioters far differently than they treated Black Lives Matter protesters in D.C. last summer. This was what met protesters in Washington then, following the death of George Floyd.
Black leaders, Black organizers, Black protesters are treated completely different. We spent an entire summer, last summer, fighting for people like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and we were met with rubber bullets.
We were in front of the White House at Lafayette Park when on June 1st, with little warning, in response to a largely peaceful protest that day, officers were ordered to quickly clear the area using different chemical irritants and projectiles. Moments later, the president strode across the park for a photo op to hold up a Bible. So why the difference?
The Capitol Police were trying to do something a little softer as we tried to welcome protesters up there, but it got out of hand.
Almost immediately, many asking what would have happened had they been Black or Muslim protesters.
No one can tell me that if had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesting yesterday, they wouldn't have been treated very, very differently than the mob of thugs that stormed the Capitol. We all know that's true. And it is unacceptable, totally unacceptable.
Aaron, it's not just how differently these protesters were treated that is so glaring. It's why they came out as well. Those Black Lives Matter protesters coming out demanding an end to deadly violence at the hands of police, while supporters of the president coming out rioting against these wild, crazy conspiracy theories that have been widely debunked and that have been pushed by the president of the United States himself. Aaron?
All right, Alex, thank you very much. And now, to quote the rioters, we want our country back. They don't get to steal it from us. That is exactly what one reporter heard as he witnessed every bit of the pro-Trump rioters storming Congress. He was actually amidst them, in the middle of a group, following them into the Capitol, and he captured it all. Harrowing scenes of chaos and destruction. Watch for yourself.
We followed the aggrieved and infuriated Trump supporters as they stormed the building. Through broken windows and doors they had forced open. And for a few heady moments they felt they had won a precious victory. They were now in the very heart of the Congressional building. Of storming Congress itself.
Because they work for us. They don't get to steal it from us. They don't get to tell us we didn't see what we saw. We respect the law. We were good people. The government did this to us. We were normal, good, law-abiding citizens, and you guys did this to us. We want our country back. We are protesting for our freedom right now. That's the difference.
What's the purpose of storming Congress?
How do I know that?
They reached and entered the Speaker's office itself, although Nancy Pelosi and other lawmakers had already been evacuated to safety.
There you go, brother.
As we filmed, protesters tore down Pelosi's nameplate.
And so here we are right now inside the halls of Congress. This is exactly what so many anticipated, and yet the Capitol Hill police are doing their best, but failing to control the situation.
All right, the man you saw there, Robert Moore, Washington correspondent for ITV News, is with me now. And Robert, look, you have been justly lauded for that exceptional piece of reporting. You talked to some of the people we heard there, but a lot of other people who were there in the heat of the moment, who passionately believed every single word they were saying. Tell us what kinds of things you heard.
I think that's exactly right, Erin. I mean, we were at that point just at the exact security vulnerability of Capitol Hill. There'd been some scuffles outside, and then we followed this crowd of Trump supporters up into a side door. They broke that window, got through the door, and into the very sort of corridors of power. And what we saw there, what we heard, was a real blend of different views in a way. Yes, there were the ultra-nationalists, the sort of Proud Boys were there in that crowd, but there were also just people who were deep down the rabbit holes of some pretty dark and deep conspiracy theories, believing not only that the election had been stolen, but many other things. For example, one person said to me, we're after pedophiles on Capitol Hill. So there was some extraordinary sort of diversity of views, if you like, and in addition, there were also those just who had been carried away, were almost intoxicated by this heady atmosphere. There was almost a sort of a belief that, you know, against all the odds, they'd broken through the Capitol Hill lines and were somehow humiliating the Washington political establishment. So a multitude of different views. Yes, a mob undoubtedly unruly. Yes, there was destruction. As you saw, we witnessed the ransacking of Nancy Pelosi's office. But are they domestic terrorists, as President-elect Joe Biden put it today? That's a debate, I think, that will unfold over many weeks indeed.
So, you know, when you mentioned the pedophiles point, that's a conspiracy theory, you know, as you say, a dark rabbit hole, QAnon. But what's interesting when I hear your report, I heard some of the exact words, the exact phrases that President Trump has used again and again, right, at his rallies. Here's one of the rioters you spoke to.